August 23rd, tens of thousands of people rally at the National Mall to commemorate the 15th anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, which drew 250,000 people to the nation's capital and was a key moment in the civil rights movement. The Real News' Jason Knorr spoke to Dr. Cornel West after the march.
We had very low quality leadership today on the stage. We saw bona fide apologists for the Obama administration. There was no serious talk about Wall Street. There was no serious talk about the new Jim Crow. No serious talk about drones. No serious talk about the U.S. security state. No serious talk about the massive surveillance state. It was about just voters' rights and maybe some vague reference to jobs. Martin Luther King Jr. turns over in his grave. He turns over in his grave.
Did you take part in the march today? Why or why not?
Well, no. My spirit was with the people, but I wanted to make sure I heard every word of the speakers because I've got to be on television later on today. And I want to make sure I have a sense of all the different voices. But unfortunately, the rich prophetic and progressive voices of the past and present were pushed completely to the margin, and we ended up with voices of those on the Obama plantation.
What do you mean by that?
Those who are wedded to Obama won't say a critical word about the Obama administration, won't say a critical word about the shortcomings and the nice side of the White House and executive branch.
Now, I was there for the beginning of the march, and I heard a lot of references to drones, mass incarceration, prison industrial complex, but no words on how to address those problems and what hasn't been done to address them.
I didn't hear a reference to any of those issues from the major speakers. So you heard it early on. Oh, but that's good news then. That's very good. I didn't hear one word for what was projected for the American people. You had to be at the march to hear, what was it, 2 minute presentation?
Yeah. And so what did the march 50 years ago mean as far as economic justice, racial justice, the civil rights? What did the civil rights movement mean for public education, for housing? And 50 years later, are those same messages still?
Well, 50 years ago, we were dealing with an American terrorism called Jim Crow. And you had a social movement that was expanding. You had a social movement that was intensifying. And you had Martin King, A. Philip Randolph, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, and other voices emerging. Today, you have a black leadership that is captive and deferential to the Obama administration, that it has most visible presence. You got voices on the side, Glenn Ford, Bruce Dixon, and others. But for the most part, it is so tied to the Obama administration, we cannot get any truth telling. Not at all.
Now, I interviewed about 10 people at the march, random people that had taken part in the march in 63. So they were there, and they themselves were not willing to be critical of the current administration. But
that's the whole atmosphere.
Show a lack of leadership with this current march.
Absolutely. That an atmosphere has been created that is so protective that people can't be free to speak their minds, to speak in the name of justice when the Obama administration falls short, as with drones, captivity to Wall Street, silence on new Jim Crow, and so on.
And why is it important that the leadership of this march address those issues that were, like you said, you didn't mention Wall Street.
Those are the major issues of our day. Those are the issues of the American empire. Those are the issues that the world itself is looking for leaders and black leaders to speak to.
And the fact that Al Sharpton, National Action Network, they ran this march, they gave out the press credentials. Talk about his positions on things like housing, on public education. He supported race to the top.
No, I mean, he's my dear brother, but he's a bona fide House Negro of the Obama plantation. And that's how House Negroes behave. They don't want to hear the truth of the underside of their boss. Just a fact.
And so one of the key components of the civil rights movement was fighting for civil rights and public education for everybody. Now,
this brother right here would talk about public education.
I'll talk to you after that.
Interview this brother. Yeah. He got something to say. Absolutely.
So Dr. King believed in a universal public education.
Yes, he did.
Everybody. Obama has endorsed race to the top competition, charter schools, great schools for some people, but not for everybody.
That's
Al
right.
Sharpton has endorsed that. So talk about the significance of that and the fact that voices that support public education for everybody, voices that support teachers unions, which are a huge part of the civil rights movement. Dr. King, someone told me today, Dr. King died fighting against the privatization of unions. So talk about the significance of
Well, he died fighting with sanitation workers to try to promote their dignity and that they have access to a living wage. But no, as I said before, I mean, unfortunately, Brother Al Sharpton has fallen lockstep with the Obama administration. And when you're on the plantation, you don't oppose the master in the big house. It's just a fact. So it's not just private education. Stop and frisk was the same way. This brother and I had to get arrested a year before they got the green light from the White House to fight stop and frisk because the mayor of New York City is such a close friend of the president.
Now, you were part of the movement that put stop and frisk on the map.
Well, this brother here called it. We called it together, yeah.
You're part of that movement that got stop and frisk addressed by the media. This huge public reactions following months after your arrest and others' arrest. It got addressed, and this movement rose and it got talked about. You had, I looked at this on Google News, 50 mentions of stop and frisk 3 years before the arrest that you took part in, thousands of mentions afterwards.
Wow.
And public opinion turned against it. Public opinion was for stop and frisk before.
Yeah.
It's against it now. You have the judge ruled against stop and frisk. New York City has now passed the Community Safety Act, which bans racial profiling, yet Obama has suggested that Ray Kelly be promoted
That's
to
right.
security. But talk about the significance of that.
No, Ray Kelly is the poster child for racial profiling in America. Barack Obama said he's outstanding, his values are my values. So you can see the hypocrisy of calling on the one hand
What's
a
your
critique.
reaction to that?
My reaction to it is outrage because I don't like hypocrisy. He talked about racial profiling in his own case in regard to Brother Trayvon Martin. Then he calls to appoint somebody who is the poster child for racial profiling. They head to Homeland Security, so it's ridiculous. But I got